Hi everyone, it's Nicole Mitchell again, and today I'm super excited to introduce you to a friend of mine. This is Shannon.
Hey.
And so I met Shannon a few years ago. I actually read an article by him online, which I shared, I think, in the very first video I did in the Coming Out series, and started following him and his work, and then I found out he was local and I wanted to be his friend, so I tried to like friendly stalk him to like try to make a connection, and I got connected a couple years ago with a theater company that he runs, and he has a master's degree. He's super brilliant, smart, talented person. I'm super excited for you guys to meet him. All right, so today we are gonna talk about why, how should we say this? Why queer people don't need to always address the Clobber passages.
Yeah.
And Shannon's going to share some of his viewpoint. All right, Shannon, if you can share with us how you identify, what you do for work, and some things about you just so we can know you a little bit.
Yeah, so I am a transgender man. I identify as queer and transgender. I have a master's degree, a Master of Divinity from Union Theological Seminary in New York City. I'm an ordained Old Catholic priest, which is an independent progressive Catholic tradition. And then I do a lot of things for work. I work at a Lutheran church as a director of faith formation. I run queertheology.com with my co-founder Brian Murphy, which provides resources and inspiration for LGBTQ Christians and their supporters. And I run Uprising Theater Company. This is our sweatshirt. I feel like I'm always repping the theater company.
It's an amazing company.
So we do work around justice issues and then partner with local organizations who are working on those issues. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so he's actually the one, he and Brian, their website, queertheology.com, that's where I took that queer theology course I referred to in one of my first videos, and it was phenomenal. Highly recommend it if you're curious about learning more. So Shannon, I would love for you to share. So I guess the story here is I actually messaged Shannon and asked him if he would address a Clobber passage with me. And he said he was thrilled to do a video with me, but that he does not address Clobber passages. And he shared why. And I felt like his point is a very important point for this conversation that we've been having over the past several weeks. And I wanted to make sure to bring his voice to the table. And so we're going to do that today. So can you share why you don't do Clobber passages?
Yeah, so, you know, I've been doing LGBTQ religious work for, since probably 2004, so 13, 14 years now. And in the beginning, I think like you, I felt like I really had to spend all of my time doing Clobber passages work, right? Like both for myself, I had to research them and learn them and know them. And then I felt like that was really the only conversation to be had with people who were against LGBT people. And the longer that I've done this work, the more I've realized that that, frankly, to me, is a fruitless conversation. And the reason is because, you know, the work has been done. The books are out there. Nothing around biblical translation and interpretation has really changed since 1981 when the first books came out. And so, like, it's all there. People can do the work if they want to. And what getting stuck in that conversation does to LGBT people is it forces us to constantly be on the defensive. And we're always having to defend our humanity. We're having to defend our spirituality. We're having to defend the fact that we've done the work. Like I was telling you earlier, every time we post something on Queer Theology, someone will be like, well, what about... And it's like, yeah, we've read the verses. We've done the work. Have you? And so we do this work all the time. We know these passages. What we found is that it's more helpful to tell stories, to tell stories of our lives, to tell stories of the unique things that we bring to Scripture, the gifts that we give to the church, the things that we see uniquely. Like that to me is where life-giving work is found. So that's why I don't do that work anymore. I do the work that is actually life-giving to me and to my community.
That's so good. Yeah, I looked to Shannon for expertise because he has been in the field for over a decade. I've been in it for like 2 months. Well, I've been doing my homework for like a year and a half. Yeah. That's when I realized I was queer, and then I've only publicly come out a matter of weeks ago. So I looked to someone like him who's gone before me on this journey and just learning from him. So I feel like I'm learning as much from him, but I'm hoping you guys will learn from him as well. I would like you to share with them like why you feel like queer people don't need to always address these passages. Not only because it makes us defensive, but because of what it means to be a marginalized, oppressed person having to do these passages. If you could expound on that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think the problem with always doing Clobber passages work is that it puts the onus on people who are already marginalized and oppressed, and especially marginalized and oppressed in religious spaces, to constantly be doing the work, and to be doing the work for other people. Like we have to do our own work for ourselves. For some of us, that does look like really grappling with the Clobber passages, or learning biblical languages, or going to seminary, whatever that is. And whatever that work is for us, great, do your work. Right. But I think the problem is when other people demand us to do the work for them, work that they don't want to do, work that they say that they don't have time to do, but frankly, work that they just aren't willing to do. And it's really unfair for any people from a privileged community to ask marginalized, oppressed people to do work for them.
This is something I didn't learn probably till a few years ago, and it might have not been until I took your queer theology course, but it's almost like there's this power dynamic that a lot of privileged people don't realize they have until they form relationships with those who have less power.
Absolutely.
And so, like, it is really important that when people who are in a privileged position, and in our society, that's straight people, that's one class of privilege, and so then to expect people who aren't straight to do the work for them, there's just a power dynamic there that I feel like a lot of my straight friends aren't aware of. I wasn't aware of for most of my life. And so we do ask, like, as queer people to, like, show up and do your homework, which I've said a couple times in a couple of my videos, but I cannot tell you how important it is. And Shannon and I were talking earlier about how when people do their work, it actually communicates care and love for us. And the flip side is true. When people aren't willing to do that work, that communicates that you don't care, and you don't care about us. And so, and we know people are busy, we know people have different lives, but if you are truly curious and want to learn, I think putting in the effort shows your care for us. I would love for you to share about addressing the humanity of LGBTQ people.
Yeah, and I want to just piggyback on what you just said about, like, when you're unwilling to do your work, not only does it show that you don't care, but when you then continue to argue with people who have done their work, like, not only does it show that you don't care, but you're not being a kind or nice person. And so it really, like, not only do you need to do your own work, but if you're not willing to do your work, then you need to back out of the conversation until you're willing to have done your work. Because I can't tell you the amount of people who will come at me and I'll say, here's a resource, and they're like, well, I don't have time for that. But they have time to argue with me for the next hour. And it's like, okay, in the hour that you have been arguing with me on Facebook or Twitter or wherever, you could have read the article that I sent you. So please just do your work or stop arguing.
I'm so glad you said that. It's like, that's such common sense, but, like, people don't see that. Like, all that time and energy you're spending arguing, you could be taking that time and energy and be learning, and that just changes everything. It just changes the flow of the conversation and the interaction between people. Yeah. So go ahead about humanity.
Yeah, I think it's really important. We're living in a world, and I think in a political climate particularly, and a religious climate in the United States that really seeks to dehumanize the other. And when we are able to dehumanize someone else, like, it excuses things like violence, it excuses things like discriminatory laws, it excuses all of this really wretched behavior, and it puts people who are already oppressed and marginalized at even greater risk. I was just doing some research. I'm doing a talk actually at the church that I work for, Transgender Day of Remembrance, and I'm doing some work around the statistics for trans folks in the United States, and this is the deadliest year on record ever for murder in the trans community.
And this is the murdering of trans people just because they are trans.
Yeah. And when you read these stories, it's like stuff like, someone was arguing with their significant other and then they got murdered. Someone called the police for help and they got murdered. Someone, went on a date and they got murdered. So all of these, like, normal behaviors that turn violent. And often the ways that these murders are enacted are, like, horrifically overkill and ridiculously violent. And the only way that you can look at that and understand it is to see that in that moment, the trans person was not considered human, and they were considered disposable. That's the only way that you can explain why, in case after case, the violence is just so over the top. And it's primarily also trans women of color. So we have sexism and, you know, racism all mixed up also with trans misogyny. And so, like, I'm doing this research, and I'm going to be presenting it to folks who are mostly not trans. And I mean, you and I were talking, like, I don't know how to say it any clearer, but, like, we need you to see us as human, like, because it's literally killing us. It is killing our communities. It is literally killing our bodies. And, you know, it's 24 people that have been murdered in the United States this year. That doesn't include the number of trans youth we've lost to suicide. It doesn't include, you know, all of the attempts of self-harm. And, like, we can't look at those statistics and say that it's just that trans people are depressed. It's like we are living in a society that so dehumanizes us that we can't even see our own worth. And, like, that's on the straight and cisgender community. Like, you got to do that work and see us as human. Yes,
it's. I was telling Shannon how in almost all of my videos I make the comment, like, even if we disagree, if you don't believe the Bible is affirming after you've done your work, I do ask that you still see my humanity. And I almost feel silly asking that, because I feel like it's 2017. We should know that all humans have inherent worth. It doesn't matter what walk they've come from, how they identify. Every human being has worth. And yet I feel like so many people have been indoctrinated, even brainwashed, to where, like, they would see a queer person and they cannot see their humanity. And that's why even in all my videos I still ask, please be kind and respectful in your comments, because I'm a human. I have feelings. I'm not invincible. I'm not immortal. And so how you treat me affects me. And I wish I didn't have to remind people of that, but there is still a need for people to be reminded of that. I've had so many people message me since coming out that they are also queer, and they're terrified of coming out. And they're people like me. I'm married. I'm in a secure marriage. I have children. I'm living my own independent life, and yet I was terrified to come out. And that fear is not just in my head. There's very real fear, and that is on our straight cisgender community to come around us and support us and love us and let us know, like, hey, you're safe with me. Your story is safe with me because I see you and your humanity and your worth. And so I just think what you said about, like, people have got to see our humanity, because, like, we can't have a conversation. If you don't see me as human, we can't have a conversation. I liked how earlier when we were talking, you shared about how we sometimes have to see the humanity first. So, okay, or share how, like, before you used to do clobber passages first, and now you do the opposite direction. Can you share that with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the reason that I do the work that I do, and the reason I even started a theater company, right, is because I see that change happens through stories. It doesn't happen through arguments about clobber passages or, you know, religious language or even how we read the Bible. It happens when we can sit down and share our stories with each other, and when people can hear my story and hear what I went through and what it was for me to come out and to transition, and, like, how I held on to my faith, like, then we can start to have a conversation about, you know, the nitty-gritty stuff. But, like, I found that people are most changed by hearing stories and by being able to enter into someone else's story. And so that's why I do that work first. I tell my story all over the place and online, and because I believe that that's where true change happens. And I believe that, like, once you encounter someone and you hear their story, then you're even more motivated to figure out what it is that you really believe. And then you can go back and approach the Bible. And what you might find is that you don't really even need to do the clobber passages work. That's what we've really found in our work with people, is that when we can actually jump past the clobber passages into story, we end up not needing to do the clobber passages work, because we enter into a relationship where we can talk about our faith more deeply, that doesn't need to be about parsing a certain passage in the Bible, but we can talk about, well, what does Scripture say about all of our lives? And that becomes really life-giving, I think, for both people, instead of this kind of non-life-giving work of arguing.
Yeah, I feel like kind of like what you shared with us earlier, and that was like when people, I'm trying to get you in here more, when people, so once you have a relationship with the LGBTQ community or someone from there, like a specific person that you have a relationship with, it changes the whole conversation. And right now, like so many people who are not affirming will like zoom in on these few tiny short verses in the entire Bible, and they're obsessed with that. And almost like one of the shifts that happen when you have a relationship with a queer person is like you almost get to zoom out. Like, all right, let's look at the bigger picture here. Let's look at the grand narrative of God and how humans were created and how we have inherent worth. And like, it just, there has to be a shift, I feel like. And this is why I love Shannon's work with the theater company and with your queer theology. Like, there's so many stories to help you connect and see the humanity of others. And that helps you, I think, better engage conversations on faith and scripture and religion. And relationship is key, I feel like.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add as we wrap this up?
You know, I think one of the things that has been a guiding principle for me and is in our work with queer theology is that, you know, we believe that queer people have more to offer the world than what we are not. And that queer people have gifts to give the church. And not only that, but like God is in the midst of the queer community in really powerful ways. And God is always working with people who are on the margins. And so if you want to be a part of the kingdom of God, it's not about inviting queer people into your church or saying that they're welcome or whatever language you want to use. It's about you going out of your church and going to where queer people are, because God is already in the midst of us. Yes. And we have something vital and life-giving to share because of our lives and because of our faith journeys. And like, the more you exclude, not only are you hurting queer people, but you're hurting yourselves and you're hurting your own faith journey. And like, you're missing out, because the queer community is amazing. And the stories of queer and trans Christians are phenomenal. And you should be a part of that.
Yes. Oh, that's a perfect way to end this video. And below in the description box, I'm actually going to post, you wrote an article about that like a few years ago that I read that led me to following him. I'm going to share that article and some other resources from his website to just get you connected and help you go deeper on this kind of conversation we just had. But thank you so much, Shannon, for
my pleasure
doing this with me. Thank you guys for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe so that you guys can stay up to date with the latest videos. All right, bye.